the life and times of Imam Malik rahimahullahu ta'ala. Furthermore, we mentioned, does anyone remember when Imam Malik was born? We mentioned this last week. Who was here last week with me? Okay. So we mentioned that Imam Malik rahimahullah was born in the year 93. Okay, the year 93 after the Hijrah. He was born after Abu Hanifa rahimahullah by 13 years. And Imam Malik, he himself said, I was born in the year 93, because there's a great ikhtilaf, there's a bunch of opinions as to when Imam Malik was born. Scholars have narrated that he was born in the year 90 all the way to 98, 97, 96, 90, and so on. But 93 was chosen simply because Imam Malik himself stated that he was born on this day, on this year. It was said, Imam Malik rahimahullah, his mother was pregnant with him for 2 years. And this is possible. We know this in the Sharia, that this is very much possible that someone can be pregnant for this amount of time. This is qeel, it was said this. Allahu a'lam on the authenticity of it, but the information about Imam Malik's mother is very little. As a matter of fact, there wasn't even a name mentioned who she was. The name Imam Malik, his name is actually Malik ibn Anas, rahimahullahu ta'ala. His great-grandfather was a Sahaba and part of all the battles of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam except the Battle of Badr. Okay, so the Battle of Badr, his great-grandfather didn't take part in that battle, but every other one, the great-grandfather was part of it. His grandfather now, not the great-grandfather, but the grandfather, he was senior tabi'een, senior from the tabi'een. Furthermore, this tabi' from the tabi'een, so his grandfather also helped with the compilation of the Quran. His father, as we mentioned, there wasn't much documented on him. You know, all that's mentioned in the books of the life and times of these Imams when it comes to their parents is very little. Imam Malik, there's no name mentioned of his father. The only way you can figure his father out is through his lineage. However, a specific name and about his father, there isn't much mentioned about him. All that's mentioned is that his father used to take care of the family. He was a just man and took care of the home. Not much, as we mentioned, is narrated about the mother. As far as his upbringing is concerned, how did Imam Malik rahimahullah seek knowledge? Okay, so his upbringing when it comes to seeking knowledge of al-Islam. Like all the scholars, what's the first thing that all scholars begin to do when they seek knowledge? What is the first thing they do? Anybody knows? Memorize the Quran. Read the Quran and memorize it. And this happened during the time of Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, when a student came to him and he wanted to be part of the halaqah, part of the lesson that Imam Ahmad was teaching. So he said to the Shaykh, to the Imam, he said, "Ya Imam Ahmad, you know, I want to be a part of this." So Imam Ahmad asked him one question alone. He said, "Have you memorized Quran?" He said, "No." He said, "Go back, memorize Quran, then come back to me." So it shows that the importance of memorizing Quran is part of the foundations of anybody to seek knowledge. Memorizing Quran is the asas or the foundation whenever you want to seek knowledge. There's a very famous saying amongst the ulama that nobody is a true student of knowledge. Nobody has reached the level of talibul ilm, a student of knowledge, unless they have memorized the Quran. This is the least they can do. Other scholars went as far as saying no one has the right to preach Islam, give a khutbah, lead the salah unless they've memorized Quran. So this shows the importance of somebody to have foundation in their knowledge. And what better foundation is there than what Islam is derived from? The entire religion is derived from the Quran. When it came to Hadith, Imam Malik rahimahullah was extremely brilliant. He had a powerful memory, and one of the Salaf during his time narrated 30 hadith to Imam Malik. Told him 30 hadith. So one day Imam Malik returned back to this teacher, and he said all 29 of the hadith, and he was missing one. So the Sheikh returned back to him and said to him that there was never a time that I was studying hadith except that every word that was said to me, I remembered it. This is what the teacher is saying to Imam Malik. So when Imam Malik heard this, immediately he remembered the 30th hadith, and he said it. What is the benefit of this? You know what happened? This Sheikh, his name was Ibn Shihab, he said to Imam Malik 30 hadith in front of him and told him, repeat it back to me. All 30. And Imam Malik, because of his powerful memory, he heard all of this just once, and he repeated back 29 of them. So the Sheikh is telling him, say, listen, you know, you're still young. Whatever I've learned, it stayed with me. So you got to try harder. In other words, you got to work harder than this. And subhanAllah, all he was doing was missing one hadith. One hadith alone. And there are many stories like this of Imam Bukhari, Al-Imam Muslim, rahimahumullah, going through the same experience. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, was extremely poor. He was so poor that it was said that when he used to go and seek knowledge, he had no money for books, no money to travel. And the house that he was living in had a roof. And he took the roof and sold it so that he can get money to buy books. And he was living in this house with no roof. All he cared about was ilm, and all he wanted was his books. So this is at the level of how poor Imam Malik started off. Eventually, we will come to this, eventually he became very rich. He became so rich, he wore the most expensive perfume that was ever heard of in the city that he was living in, which is Al-Medina. Everyone knew him for his attire, his clothing that he would wear. He would always be dressed the best out of anyone. His clothes would be perfect in cleanliness, in smell, in beauty and appearance. He also had a ring that he would wear. And on the ring it said, Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakil, which is the same statement that Ibrahim alayhi salam said when he was thrown into the fire. This was the same dua that he was making when the mushrikun had done that to him. We come now to the teachers or the shuyukh of Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah. Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah states in one of his classical works called Tahdhib li-asma'at, or Tahdhib al-Asma' al-Lughat. And this is a collection, it's about 2 volumes, that has names of various companions, the Salaf and those who came after them. It has a brief, small biography of each of these people. Some of the ulama, they memorize these books. It's about 2 volumes, and they memorize the entire things with literally hundreds and hundreds of sheikhs and their names and their backgrounds and who they were. And Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah states in the same book that Imam Malik had over 900 sheikhs, 900 teachers that he took from. 800 of them were from the tabi'een. 600 of them came after the tabi'een. Okay? 600 of them came after the tabi'een. Furthermore, Imam Malik rahimahullah, it was said that he loved to learn from one particular scholar by the name of Abdul Rahman ibn Harmaz, who was at the time Imam Malik was only 7 years old learning from the Sheikh. And Imam Malik used to keep his sheikhs, he used to keep these sheikhs to such an extent that they would be like a father to him. He would literally be side by side at 7 years old, the tender age of 7. What are kids doing at 7 years old now? Right? Now we're not saying to be at the extent of Imam Malik, but the fact that Imam Malik was interested in knowledge at that age, just interested in learning about Islam, is incredible. These are the benefits of why we study the life of the Salaf. Studying the life of the Salaf is a way to increase our Iman. This is one of the main reasons why this whole halaqah is happening. Why we sit here and we study the lives of these men, to see struggles they've gone through, to perfect and learn the religion of al-Islam. Once there was a time when Imam Malik rahimahullah, he was with a Sheikh, and he loved the Sheikh so much that he wanted the Sheikh all for himself. So he went to the children of the Sheikh, his kids, and he said to them, he said, listen, if anybody comes and asks for your father, here, give them these dates and tell them your father is busy with someone else. So the kids will be like, okay, they got dates from Imam Malik, so they'll tell anybody who wants to see the father, yes, he's busy with someone. So this way, Imam Malik had him all to himself, and constantly would be learning from the same Sheikh. As we mentioned, Imam Malik rahimahullah studied and began studying at a very tender age. He was very young. And he once approached his mother and asked, Mom, should he begin to write what he's learning? Okay, should he begin to write what he's learning? Imam Malik is asking his mother this. The reason why we're going to mention this is so you can actually picture how young Imam Malik is. The mother is putting clothes on Imam Malik. She's helping him get dressed because he's too young to dress himself. And he's asking her, should I write what the sheikhs are teaching me? So subhanallah, you can see at the age, you can understand now, and put a picture in your head how young these mashayikh are, how young they are. And the mother eventually told Imam Malik, don't write yet. However, ta'allam min al-adab qabla al-ilm, you know, try to learn from manners of the sheikhs. Try to learn from their actions first before you learn from their knowledge. Basic principle, anybody who is going to seek knowledge, you learn from the adab and the akhlaq of the mashayikh before you take from their knowledge. You know how you can tell, one of the ways you can tell when a sheikh has adab, when a sheikh has manners, the first time you meet them, you will always remember them after that moment. You will always think of them, you will always remember them because that first meeting was a positive one. It was a good one, and it was a meeting that reached your heart. This is one of the most effective ways you know that that sheikh has akhlaq, or that imam has manners, that imam has good actions, good words, and insha'Allah there is some sincerity in that person. The first meeting you have with them, as opposed to some leaders, when you meet them, you know, they give you this impression as though they're not really interested to hear what you have to say, because they meet hundreds of people or thousands of people all the time. So it's just like wassalaam, and they just kind of walk away. They don't look at you. They don't do the extra little things to make you feel comfortable with them and to keep that brotherhood between you and them. Okay, so this is why Imam Malik rahimahullah, his mother told him, don't worry about writing the knowledge yet. Just watch and learn. Observe and learn. Because if a sheikh has adab, if a teacher has manners, then everything else that they speak will have barakah in it. Allah Azza wa Jal will put blessing into those words as long as a person has adab. And we know this in the sunnah that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated in an authentic hadith, that the people who are going to be at the highest level of paradise will be those who have the best akhlaq. Not the most knowledge, but the best akhlaq. Okay, so this is very important. We can literally sit and speak about manners forever. Manners is one of the most beautiful topics in Islam to discuss. Because Imam Malik rahimahullah is very well known for hadith, he's very well known for his knowledge in hadith, it's important that we take some time to discuss his relationship with hadith. Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah was very strict with hadith, extremely strict, like no other before, mainly because he respected hadith in and of itself, that it was the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And because of this love that he had for hadith, he eventually became an imam. He was extremely reliable. He was extremely honest, trustworthy, and he had the sharpest of memories. Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah. As-Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah, who was also a great scholar of hadith, those who were around him, they said that he reached the level of the Sheikhs of Bukhari, rahimahullah. And he once said, no one was more strict in narrating hadith than Imam Malik. These are the words of Sufyan al-Thawri. Al-Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah, once stated that if Imam Malik had the slightest doubt in hadith, he would evade it, he would ignore it, and he would pay no attention to it. If he had the slightest doubt in hadith, that it could be tainted with some sort of deficiency or it could be weak in some areas, he would ignore it and he would leave it alone. So this shows the reliability of Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah. He spent his days and his nights developing respect to hadith and understanding it. He took tremendous courage and patience with hadith. He would spend days and nights, hours and hours a day trying to understand hadith and learning it and practicing it as well. There's a very beautiful story about Imam Malik that was narrated about him more than a dozen times. It was narrated that they said that whenever someone used to come to Imam Malik's home and want to ask him a question, if it had to do with the Quran or it had to do with fiqh or it had to do with tafsir or whatever the case is, Imam Malik will come out of his home and answer the question. He'll come out, listen to the question, answer it, and then he would return back to his home. However, if anyone came to him and they asked him for a hadith or asked him something about the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Al-Imam Malik would tell them to wait. And he would go into his home and he would take a shower. He would find the best clothes that he could find. He would even tie his head with the turban. He would find the best perfume that he could find. He would comb his beard. He would oil it and clean it. He would come out with his best clothes and then he would answer the question on hadith, or then he would narrate hadith. And this shows how much importance and love he had for the hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Once there was a time when he was teaching and there was a scorpion climbing his chest. There was a scorpion and he knew the scorpion was there and he remained. And the students who were listening to him, they saw the scorpion. They saw that there was something moving. Then the scorpion stung him. Now, if you've ever been stung by a scorpion, I've never been stung by a scorpion, but I have no brothers who have. And to hold the pain for just a few seconds is unbearable. Just a few seconds. So Imam Malik, he got stung by a scorpion and he remained there and he continued to teach until he was finished. He was teaching hadith and he wanted to stay there till he was finished. The students asked, why did you do this? You know, the scorpion was there and then it stung you. Why didn't you inform one of us so we can help you? He said, I did not want to interrupt the hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So I bared the pain. And I waited. And I didn't want to cut a sentence. I didn't want to cut the words of our messenger. So I continued until I was finished. But subhanallah, this is the patience and the honor that Ahlul Ilm have for knowledge. This is why they are considered to be Ahlul Ilm. Because they love knowledge. They love to study it. They're not studying it for any other gains. They're not studying it because they want to give durus. They want to give lessons and lectures. They want to write books. Ahlul Ilm, the people of knowledge, they study it and understand because they love it for what it is. It is the true and ultimate happiness in this dunya, and it is the true and ultimate way for someone to reach Allah Azza wa Jal's paradise. Also, there's another narration that it was said that any time someone would come to Imam Malik and they would speak about hadith, and if they spoke in a loud voice, Imam Malik would become extremely upset at this. Extremely upset. And he would tell them, stop. And he would quote the ayah. I believe in Surah Al-Hujurat, where Allah Azza wa Jal says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, la tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawti an-nabi. O you who believe, do not raise your voice above the voice of our Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So this was his interpretation. He understood the ayah in such a way that when you speak a hadith or when you speak a messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you do it as though he is with you. You speak about it as though he is around you. And so don't raise your voice. Don't speak in a loud manner, but speak in a quiet, soft, and constructive manner. Imam Malik rahimahullah as a teacher, how was he as a teacher? After memorizing the sunnah, after memorizing all the ahadith, the knowledge, he began to teach and he was only 17 years old. There is another narration that Imam Malik rahimahullah used to give fatwa about Shahrul Ramadan. People used to come to him and ask him various questions regarding Ramadan. And at the same time, as he's answering the questions, he was eating. And it was in Ramadan this was happening, which meant that he wasn't fasting. Does anybody know why? He was underage. He was too young. SubhanAllah, he was too young to fast, but he had enough knowledge to give fatwa to all those who came to him. And he would be eating at the same time he would be speaking to these people. So at the age of 17, he began to officially teach. His class eventually became larger than his teacher's class. All the teachers that he went to, and he learned from them, at 17 years old, he began to teach, and his class became bigger than all the rest. Important note here. When you see a sheikh or an imam, that the majority of the community or people come to rush to hear what he has to say, realize that this person, they have some sincerity in their heart. And we've mentioned this before. How many times have you seen that there are brothers and sisters who have PhDs after PhDs? They're a doctor in like almost every field you can think of. However weak, there is only a few people who will listen to them. When they cry, no one is crying. When they recite perfectly and they begin to cry. However, it doesn't reach the hearts of those who are listening. As opposed to someone else who is of the extreme opposite. No PhD. He's probably sat and read a few books, or he's gone to a university and he studied there for a bit. He comes back, or she comes back, and he begins to preach. The entire community, the entire city is running, trying to drink out every single word that is coming out of this person's mouth. They're drinking it, literally. They're waiting to see what else is he going to say. What is his next topic? What is his answer to so-and-so question? Realize that a person like this, it is filled with barakah. And it says something about the sincerity of that person and what they are doing for the sake of Azza wa Jal. It was said that Imam Malik rahimahullah, he would never teach a science unless at least 70 sheikhs, would say to him, we acknowledge that you are fluent in this science. We acknowledge this. And we know that you have knowledge of this particular science, so you should teach it. You should answer questions regarding it. And only when this happened, then Imam Malik rahimahullah would begin to teach. And as we mentioned, at least 70 of the mashayikh would come and tell him this. As we mentioned, Imam Malik rahimahullah, he lived in Medina his entire life, and he remained there, and he continued to teach. How many of us here have been to Medina? Okay, very few. If you go into the haram right now in Medina, the haram of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will find that there is an area called the Rawda. The Rawda is the garden of paradise. As the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in an authentic hadith, that whatever is between his minbar, okay, so the pulpit here, the minbar, and his house, all of that which is in between, this is in his masjid only, not all the masajid, only his masjid. What is between it is like a garden from the gardens of paradise. So anybody who prays there, who sits there, if they say, I'm sitting in Jannah right now, the statement is correct. This is why Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, where did Imam Bukhari rahimahullah used to write his Sahih? He wrote his Sahih al-Bukhari. Where did he used to do it? He sat between the minbar and the Prophet ﷺ in the Rawdah. And this is why some of the ulama of hadith, they state that Sahih al-Bukhari was written in Jannah. You will see the statement when you look into the explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari in the introduction. You will see that they will say that this book has been written in paradise. What they are saying is it wasn't written in paradise up above, but rather it was written in the Rawdah. And so Imam Malik rahimahullah, he used to teach in this area. And the reason why is that he wanted to teach in the same place that Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu used to teach, as well as the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to teach. So when these people were alive, this is where they used to sit and teach. And so Imam Malik rahimahullah wanted to be in the same area. It was said that Imam Malik rahimahullah loved to imitate. He was very, very much interested in doing a lot of the things that Umar ibn al-Khattab done, a lot of the decisions that he made in his affairs and so on and so forth. He remained teaching in the masjid until he became very sick, right beside the grave of the Prophet ﷺ. This is where his durus would happen. And it was around the grave of the Messenger is where they described that it was a garden of knowledge. It was said that when people used to come, min kulli fajjin amiq, from all the different places and different countries of the world to come and pray in the Prophet ﷺ's masjid, they would hear that there would be someone speaking. And this was the voice of Imam Malik. His classes were going on. And everybody who used to come, they would remain silent. And they would want to come and be close to the class. And they would come there from all over and ask questions and get answers to various problems, various situations that were happening in their country. And it was part of the method. It's important for us here to mention this point. See how we're talking about hadith all the time? Hadith, hadith, hadith. Now we know that there is something that supersedes hadith, which is of course the Quran. It's important for us to know that even though Imam Malik rahimahullah had such a strong love for hadith, it did not equal the love that he had for the Quran. The Quran was always what he began his durus with, his lessons with, his classes with, teaching with. He always began with the Quran first. And it was understood, it was known that Imam Malik rahimahullah loved the Quran and put the Quran always first before he would come and speak about hadith. There's a beautiful story of once there was a man who came to Imam Malik rahimahullah, and he traveled for 6 months to get to him. 6 months he traveled till he finally got to Medina, and he finally met Imam Malik, and he asked him a question. Now the actual narration doesn't say what the question was, but he asked him a question. And subhanAllah, imagine you're traveling for 6 months to meet someone. And he asked him a question, and Imam Malik said, La adri. I don't know. And the man said to him, well, I come here for so long, for so many months, and all you've said to me is you don't know. What should I tell my people when I return back to them? What should I say to them? He said, Imam Malik said to this man, he said, go back to those people you've come from and say to them that you've asked me this question, and my response to you, La adri, I don't know. Go back and say this to them. Imam Malik rahimahullah was known for this. He was known to constantly say, I don't know. He was known for this. As a matter of fact, when he was dying, he was sick for approximately 22 days. And during that time, close to his death, people used to still come to him and ask him dozens and dozens of questions. 32 questions that were asked on the night that he died, he said, La adri, he doesn't know. So this shows his sincerity up until his death. If he did not know something, he was the Imam of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And even at that time, it's getting louder, right? even at that time, he said, La adri. Okay, good, no problem. He said, La adri. This goes back to an important statement of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma. For once Ibn Abbas heard of a man who would answer every single question he was asked. Anytime this person was asked a question, this man would continue to answer all the time. So Ibn Abbas was eventually, this was brought to his attention, and he said, Man hadha al-majnoon? Who is this crazy person? Alladhi yujibu ala kulli su'al, that he answers each and every question that he's been asked. No shyness, no hesitation. This is never the akhlaq or the manners of Ahlul Ilm. When they did not know something, they would never say, well, I think it could be so-and-so. Or there is a possibility you can do this. You won't hear the statement from Ahlul Ilm. If they don't know, they will say, Allahu a'lam la adri. We don't know. For this is a statement even that Allah Azza wa Jal puts in the Quran and says that we have not given you except only a small portion of this knowledge. Only a small portion of this knowledge. And this is why Allah Azza wa Jal says in Surah Al-Taha, and He commanded the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and said to Muhammad, He said to him, وَقُرْ رَبِّي زِدْنِي عِلْمًا, and say, O my Lord, increase me in knowledge. He never said, oh Allah, He never said to the Prophet ﷺ, ask me for power, ask me for more wives, ask me for more status, more money. He said only to ask me for this one thing only, and that is, ask me for more knowledge. So this shows that even Imam Malik rahimahullah, aside from his status and his honor and his knowledge that he had, whenever he was asked a question and he did not know, he would say, I don't know. Another narration took place where a man asked him a question. Imam Malik replied, La adri, I don't know. So the man said to him, this is a very simple question. I'm sure you can answer this question. Imam Malik became very upset. It was described as his face became red, full of passion. And he said to the man, who are you to say that knowledge is something that is easy? When Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, Inna sanulqi alayka qawlan thaqila, we will send upon you, O Muhammad, a heavy speech, some difficult, the Quran, and the knowledge that the Quran has. We are going to place this on you, and it's going to be difficult for you to carry. So Imam Malik became very upset that someone will come to him and say to him, well, this is a simple question, I'm sure you can answer it. There's nothing simple about speaking on behalf of Allah Azza wa Jal when it comes to his religion. And Imam Malik wasn't done. You figure that after he said this to the man, he'd leave him alone. He came back to him again. Imam Malik came back to the man and said, that he was upset, just to show him how upset he was at this statement, and said that there is nothing easy about speaking what is halal in Allah's religion and what is haram in Allah's religion. There's nothing easy about this. For we all know and understand that Allah Azza wa Jal will eventually bring each and every single person adam ala about kulli qawlin qult, every single word that they said, every single answer that they gave, and all those who were affected by this answer will all be questioned on behalf of that one person. He will have to give account for every answer that he has given. And those who are listening, all the people they've told, well, you know what, brother so-and-so said so. Then that message gets passed on to another, to another, to another, to another. That one person will be asked about all of these hearts. And so Imam Malik rahimahullah understood this. And this is why he became very upset whenever someone will come to him and say, it's a simple question. Something simple, you can answer this. We know of a famous statement of Imam Abu Hanifa. We mentioned this last week, where when he was studying the Quran, he said he found it difficult. He found it difficult to study the Quran. because children would come to him and ask him about the Quran. Children would come to him and ask him about the Quran. So he found this difficult, and he couldn't go further in understanding the Quran. This is why he eventually came to fiqh and he remained there. He found it difficult to speak on behalf of Allah Azza wa Jal on his religion, about what is halal, what is haram, what is permissible, what is not. As we mentioned to you, knowledge is something that is heavy and is something that is difficult. This is why the Salaf, rahimahumullah, they stated, anybody who wishes to seek knowledge, let them put on their metal shoes. Meaning, let them prepare for hardship. Let them prepare for hardship. Seeking ilm is never easy. Seeking knowledge is never easy. And we've mentioned before the statement of Imam Shafi'i when he said that a body that is rested and is at ease will never seek knowledge, will never have it. So this is a person who will always find comfort. You know, he's sitting in his home and he's relaxed. He'll open a book and he'll read about a particular issue, a particular science. And then he will close the book and then he will begin to share out fatwa as though it is candy for everyone. And he will begin to teach and he will begin to do everything. This was never the methodology of seeking ilm. For seeking knowledge, it is the most difficult thing someone can ever delve into. The great scholar, Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti rahimahullah, Sheikh Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti rahimahullah, who died approximately 40 years ago. He was a great scholar. His students said at his time, he was a man that should be living during the time of the Sahabas. Because of his piety, because of his immense knowledge. Some of his students even mentioned that he should have had his entire madhab, he should have an entire madhab for himself. It was a gift from Allah Azza wa Jal, and his children are still alive here today. And once Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti rahimahullah was sitting in a gathering, just as we are sitting right now. And there was a speaker speaking, and he was saying, Alhamdulillah, al-ilm sahl, al-ilm wasi' wa muntashir wa kada kada kada. He was saying that, Alhamdulillah, knowledge is easy. You can find books and you can find resources everywhere, and knowledge is widespread right now. And Muhammad al-Amin al-Shanqiti rahimahullah stood up and looked at the man and said, Wallahi, this knowledge is not easy. Wallahi, knowledge is not easy. And he repeated a third time, Wallahi, this knowledge is not easy. And I will repeat it a fourth time and say to you, Wallahi, this knowledge is not easy. Realize this knowledge is something thaqeel and heavy, and at the same time it is given to those whom Allah Azza wa Jal wants goodness for into this dunya. We continue and conclude insha'Allah with the life of time of Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah. And we mention some of his students. Now we're not going to mention names of his students, because as a matter of fact, Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah collected the names of all of his students and he put it into a book form. And he said that the students of Imam Malik is an entire nation of themselves. Subhanallah. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of students of Imam Malik. They're too much to mention. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah just mentioned a statement and say that they are a nation of themselves. As far as some of his works is concerned, it is important for us now. Many of us might have heard of the famous book or collection of hadith called Al-Muwatta, which has been compiled by Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. Al-Muwatta, at the time that it was compiled, was the most authentic book of hadith ever put together. And Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah stated this himself. There is nothing more authentic than Al-Muwatta after the Quran. Question. Sahih al-Bukhari, we all know, is the most authentic book of hadith. So how can Imam al-Shafi'i say that Al-Muwatta is the most authentic book of a hadith, when we all know the entire ummah has agreed that Sahih al-Bukhari is the most authentic book. How do we understand this statement of Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah? Tafaddal. Good. So Sahih al-Bukhari was put together later. For example, Al-Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah was born in the year 150, and we will come to his story in a moment, inshallah. Al-Imam Bukhari rahimahullah was born in the year 194. Al-Imam al-Bukhari was only 10 years old when Imam al-Shafi'i made this statement. This is important to know because there are still people now who will say Al-Muwatta is the most authentic book of hadith that you can find. And this is an incorrect statement. This is an incorrect statement because the way Muwatta was compiled is incomparable to the way Al-Imam Bukhari compiled his. And the shurut or the conditions that Imam Bukhari went through is incomparable to the shurut or the conditions that Imam Malik rahimahullah went through to compile his book. So the fact that, as the brother mentioned, Sahih Bukhari didn't exist at that time. So everyone relied was only on Al-Muwatta. Imam Malik rahimahullah put together this collection of hadith when he was 19 years old. It was said that more than 70 of the scholars at that time told Imam Malik to put something together. Because he was such a great scholar of hadith, they said, you know, we need to preserve something. We need to preserve some of the authentic works of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so, after 70 of the scholars praised him and encouraged him to do this, he eventually came together and he put together the works of Al-Muwatta. And just some brief insights in and of itself. The chapters are all organized in accordance to the chapters of fiqh. And if you look at the books of fiqh, they will start off with the chapter of tahara, cleanliness, or salah, whatever the case is. The interesting about the Muwatta is that it starts off with salah. It doesn't start off with cleanliness. That's a whole other explanation. That's a whole other topic, inshallah. But however, for our discussion here, it's a book of fiqh, to understand fiqh. And most of the hadith in there are authentic. However, there is khilaf amongst the scholars about various ahadith and their authenticity. Having said that, that gives us just a brief insight of Al-Muwatta. And this book here is considered under the category of the Sunan works. It is considered amongst the books that we all know and heard of. Al-Nasa'i, wa-Tirmidhi, wa-Ibn Majah, wa-Abi Dawood, wal-Muwatta, wal-Musnad Iman. All of these other books of hadith, these are all considered under one category called the Sunan books, which are books that deal with fiqh issues. Some of the famous quotes of Imam Malik rahimahullah are as follows. Imam Malik, as many of the other scholars, he was a genius. And the scholars then, one of the beautiful things about these gifted people is that they always have these beautiful phrases. They always have these beautiful quotes and statements that you can write literally volumes and explain just one statement of some of the scholars and what they say. For example, Imam Malik once said that knowledge is not quantified. Rather, it is a light that Allah Azza wa Jal places in the heart. So knowledge is not how much you learn, but what you already know. Allah Azza wa Jal has put barakah in this. And of course, the example that we've looked at already is who may have many PhDs as opposed to a person who has very little qualifications. And you find that this person is here, and this one is still here, or is at the bottom. And he's gone through all these struggles, and he's still, there is no light or barakah in his knowledge. Another famous statement, that whenever somebody would come to Imam Malik rahimahullah and ask him, how was your morning? How are you doing this morning? He would always reply with one statement, and he would say, my years are decreasing, and my sins are increasing. Meaning my life is getting shorter, but my sins are increasing. This was a famous statement that anybody would ask him, so how are you doing today? This is what he would reply. Another statement or another quote from Imam Malik rahimahullah. is he mentioned that I never loved a person simply because of the blessings of Allah Azza wa Jal and what He gave that person. So Imam Malik never loved a person based on what Allah Azza wa Jal had given that person from the ni'mah of this dunya. But he would say, I would have to see the effects of the blessings in that person first. Then I would love him. So an example of this is a person is given wealth. He's given knowledge, he's given understanding, he's given wisdom, he's given all the beautiful gifts of this dunya. But Imam Malik said he would never love that person just for those things, but rather what he would see and he would look for is in the akhlaq and the manners of that person. And then we have mentioned that it is akhlaq and manners is what beautifies a person. A person is beautiful not because of his knowledge. It is not knowledge that beautifies a person. It is a person practices the knowledge, that's when they become beautiful. That is when the true beauty of a person begins to show. And we see this from Ahlul Ilm, the scholars. No matter where they come from, what country they come from, what background they are, what color their skin is, because of their knowledge, and they practice that knowledge, people will still love that person and love to be around them and love to learn from them. If a scholar wakes up in the morning, okay, he hasn't brushed his teeth, he hasn't cleansed himself, people still love him. They still want to be around him because of his akhlaq, because he is practicing the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal. Some of the habits or the descriptions of Imam Malik rahimahullah, how did he look? There is very few statements and narrations about this. It was said that Imam Malik rahimahullah was an extremely tall person. He was very strong and robust. He was very fair. He wasn't a dark person, but he was a very fair person, and he had the most beautiful of appearances. And we know this because eventually Imam Malik became very wealthy. And so he would wear the best perfume, the best clothing, etc. And so his appearance would always be beautiful in front of those who were around him. His clothes was actually custom made. He would have his clothes sewn for him, and this is what he would wear. He was very keen, especially about the way he smelled. He wasn't as keen on how he looked and the clothes he was wearing, but he always paid most attention to, when it came to appearance, on how he smelled. Because he was of the belief, and most of the ulama are like this. It's not what you wear, but it's how comfortable the people are around you. And the clothing that you wear is not going to determine how comfortable you are. We see this all the time, that we have people who will wear the most beautiful thawb, or the most beautiful hijab, or the most beautiful suit. And then you can't pray beside them. You can't be around them for a long period. Whereas opposed to someone can literally walk in with a t-shirt and a jeans. However, you can sit beside him, you can speak to him for hours, you can pray beside him, and it doesn't affect you in any way. So the smell of a person has more of an effect on himself and those around them, rather than the clothing that they wear and their appearance. Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah used to eat a piece of meat every single day. He loved to eat meat. It was said that the meat that he would eat was beef. Allahu a'lam on its authenticity. However, there is a very interesting story about a fruit that he loved, and he would eat this fruit all the time. Anybody know what the fruit is? Tfaddal. A banana. I'm sure the Somalis love that, right? Somalis love banana and the rice. When you go to Hamdi's, subhanallah, you know what? My first time I went to Hamdi's restaurant and I finished eating the rice and the beef, and then all of a sudden the brother brings a banana. I'm totally confused. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this banana. But he said that this is the custom of the Somalis, that when they eat, they also eat the banana with it. And eventually I learned that it's actually very, very, very healthy and very nutritious for the body. And now I read the statement of Imam Malik. He loved to eat banana. And he actually talked about it. And he said that the banana, subhanallah, is a fruit like the fruits of Jannah. because it's a fruit that you can find it all out the year, whether it's summer or winter. The banana is always the same, and you'll always have abundance in it. And this is, and subhanAllah, he even quotes an ayah, and he says, this is like the fruits of Jannah, and how Allah Azza wa Jal talks about the fruits of Jannah when he says, ukulaha da'imun wa dhilluha. That you eat these fruits, and you will eat them all the time throughout your presence, throughout your time in paradise. These fruits are always going to be there for you. They're always going to remain the same. They're always going to be fresh, no matter what time of the year it is. So Imam Malik actually said, it's as if Allah Azza wa Jal is also talking about the banana. And so he loved the banana, and he loved to eat it all the time. As far as his home is concerned, it was narrated that Imam Malik rahimahullah had beautiful furniture in his home. He noticed something here. Do you notice that Imam Malik, he seems to have been living a good life. Okay? He lived a good life. He ate meat every day. He ate fruits. He wore the best clothes. He had the best perfume. And he had nice furniture in his home. And it also was said that he lived in a beautiful home. And he also mentioned, he was asked about this, why do you live like this? Why are you not shy to take from this, why are you not shy to abstain from this dunya? And his response was that these are the bounties of Allah Azza wa Jal. And so I use them in a moderate and a constructive manner, and I benefit from the blessings that Allah Azza wa Jal has given to me. Okay, and this is important to know. This is important for all of us to understand. It is not haram for us to seek wealth. It is not haram for us to want to live a good and comfortable life. Jazakallah khair. To live a comfortable life in this dunya. Where the problem is al-israf. When somebody begins now to waste their time, waste their efforts struggling for the dunya. As the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that anybody who worships money will perish. Meaning anybody who makes it their time, their health, every moment of their life struggling for money, then this is the person that Allah Azza wa Jal will allow them to be perished in the dunya and in the akhirah. However, a person who receives a lot of money and a lot of wealth and wants to live a good life for himself and his family, and at the same time he pays his zakat, he pays his charity, he's always helpful to his community, he's always donating, and he's using his money in a halal way, this is something that is sometimes even encouraged amongst the ulama to do. Is encouraged. And so realize that this even happened during the time of the Salaf. Is that if they did have money, they would try to use it in a constructive and in a beneficial manner. As far as his family is concerned, Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah, he was married. Okay, and he had a wife who he loved very, very much. He praised his wife. He took care of her. He loved his wife very, very much. He had 3 children. 3 of them were boys and 1 girl. So he actually had 4 kids. So 3 boys and 1 girl. One of his children, the girl, her name was Fatima. And Fatima had memorized the entire Muwatta. The Muwatta of Imam Malik, she had memorized. And she was a young child. They said that the child, Fatima, was so young she could barely speak. But she had memorized the entire Muwatta. How did she memorize it? She used to sit by the door of Imam Malik. When students would come to his home and learn from him, she used to sit by the door and she used to put her ear against the door. And as she's listening to the hadith being read to her father, she would memorize it like that. And subhanAllah, when the students would make a mistake, she would bang the door and tell her father, hey, he made a mistake. Correct him, he made a mistake. And even Imam Malik himself responded to the daughter and he said, subhanAllah, I've never seen, I never thought that my little child will have this in her. So even Imam Malik, he himself was shocked and surprised to see that his daughter had reached to such a level. And then we conclude now to the final category, and that is, of course, the death of the great scholar and Imam, Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. As we mentioned to you earlier, he became sick for approximately 20 to 22 days. It is not mentioned what type of sickness he had. It's said, though, there are some narrations that I came across that he had some sickness due to his urine. There was some kind of problem there, but specifically what it was, Allahu A'lam. His final words that he left with in this dunya is, he said, لِلَّهِ الْأَمْرُ مِنْ قَبْلُ وَمِنْ بَعْدِ. That it is to Allah Azza wa Jal, that everything that has happened before and after, it is in His control. Allah Azza wa Jal is in control of everything. During his sickness, the day that he was dying, as we mentioned to you, there were still students coming to him and asking him questions. He was in deathbed, and he would still have to give fatwa. This is the usloob and the sunnah of the ulama. There's a story of Sheikh Uthaymeen rahimahullah, when he used to teach in Masjid al-Haram. There was a time when Sheikh Uthaymeen rahimahullah became extremely sick, and he had to do a blood transfusion. They had to take a certain amount of blood from him, and this took time. So the Sheikh was actually going to teach a class, and the doctor said to him, "You can't teach a class right now. You know, we need to do this, or else you're going to become more sick. We need to do this now." So he said, "Okay, take me to the room where you're going to do this. And as I'm lying down on the bed, put a mic beside my mouth so that I can teach my class." And so as the blood transfusion is happening, the Sheikh rahimahullah ta'ala is still teaching his class. And at that time, there were thousands who were sitting in the haram learning from the Sheikh. And so these are the scholars. These are the ulama. And so Imam Malik rahimahullah had the same attention. He was given the same priority over others. Al-Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, he stated a very famous statement saying that Malik was my teacher and my Sheikh. I received knowledge from him, and there is no one more trustworthy to me than Imam Malik. This is Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah saying this, and Imam Malik rahimahullah died, and he was 86 years old. He was one of the oldest out of the 4 Imams. Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah, it is because of this age, he was almost 90 years old. This is, many of the scholars said, he had so many teachers and he had so many students, because he lived much longer than the other Imams. And so this concludes our discussion of the life and times of Al-Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala.